And we're live.
All right. Welcome, everybody. It is January 15th, 2022, our first meeting of 2022. This is the Permissionless Software Foundation, our technical steering committee meeting. My name is Chris Troutner. I am the head janitor at the PSF. And I'm joined with a few other members of the community. Let's go around and do a quick round robin introduction. Aaron, why don't you start us off?
What's up? My name is Aaron Shoemaker. I work with the PSF. I do a lot of NFT development. Been working on some of the dev school stuff when we can get to it. And I work with the 360 3D metaverse side of things and trying to incorporate that with permissionless software.
Nice. Go ahead, David.
My name is David R. Allen. I'm a big supporter of permissionless software everywhere in the world, especially with the PSF. So there you go.
Go ahead, Stoyan.
My name is Stoyan Zhekov, and I'm helping with maintaining some of the JavaScript libraries for PSF. That's all from me.
Nice. Thanks, guys. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and share the agenda. So as always, our agendas are filed on GitHub under the Permissionless Software Foundation group in a repository called TSC for Technical Steering Committee. And we file all of our agendas as GitHub issues, and they'll have a date at the top for the date that we meet. We've got quite a bit to get through today. So our organization is definitely growing. So historically, these meetings have been the only meetings that we have because our community's been so small, and it's been an opportunity for us to celebrate our technical achievements over every 2 weeks. We're getting to the point now where we're covering so much ground over a 2-week period that it's actually getting hard to keep these meetings under an hour. So at some point, probably at some point this year, we're going to need to think about spinning out additional groups, maybe spinning up the ComCom meetings again, just to cover like general community stuff that's not non-technical in nature. But for now, we're fine. I'm just kind of foreshadowing with that right now. But let me just dive in here to the agenda. As always, anybody on the call, feel free to interrupt me at any time. I'd prefer this to be a conversation, but I have no problem getting on a soapbox and droning on if that's what's required. Anybody watching this, like the live stream on YouTube or watching this later and you have questions, the best way to reach us is the Permissionless Software Foundation Telegram channel. You can find that if you don't know where that is. You can go to psfoundation.cash, our website. Scroll to the bottom and there's a link in the footer to the Telegram channel. So again, that's psfoundation.cash. All right. So in terms of the community, one of the big updates is Gary and Daniel and I have been, we've had our own private Telegram room where we do stand-ups. Stand-ups are an artifact from the Scrum management process for building software. And so every Tuesday and Thursday we do stand up where we quickly state what we've been working on, if we have any blocks, and what we're going to work on. We are going to now start doing, now that we're into a groove, we've decided to move those stand-ups over to the general public PSF Telegram channel. So every Tuesday and Thursday, Gary, Daniel, and I will be giving our updates as to like what we're working on and what our current status is of what we're working on. So this is an attempt to just be more transparent and to engage the community a little more. So I'm pretty excited about that because we are in a good groove and we are making good, steady progress. And this is an opportunity for us to just be more transparent about that and incorporate the community in those updates.
So just clarification, Chris, that's not the VIP room, that's the general PSF.
Right. Yep, just the general PSF chat room.
Thanks.
Okay, so PSF core, this is our BCH API, REST API, BCH.js JavaScript library, and our Gatsby plugins for the web wallet. That's what composes the PSF core software. Got a few updates on that. SLP mutable data there's a link here in the agenda to the NPM library. This was sponsored by Launchpad IP, which is a patent agency. So if anybody needs a patent agent for their intellectual property, there's a link in the NPM library. Suggest you start with them, but they sponsored the development of this library, and it can be used to generate mutable or changeable data attached to an SLP token. So among other things, this can be used for permissionless token icons, but it can be used for a whole range of additional use cases, like tracking a video game character whose stats change over time, tracking the ownership of an NFT that changes over time. Virtually any piece of data that changes over time can now be tracked by a token. And so we've got some links to some examples of how to use it to create a token with mutable data, how to update that mutable data with token icon information, and then how a wallet or some other app would then retrieve and read the mutable data associated with the token. And in addition to this, we've updated wallet.fullstack.cash to automatically detect the token icon and display it in the wallet. So this has been a big feature, long time in coming. This is a hair on fire problem that people are constantly asking about. So we now have an answer to the question, how do I add an icon to my token? And there's a couple caveats here. First, this is not retroactive. You can't apply this to tokens that already exist. You have to, it's something that happens when the token is initially created with that first Genesis transaction. So that's a little unfortunate, but once this step is taken during the initial creation of the token, that mutable data and its icon, it's permissionless. The only person who can update it is the person who has the private key that controls the address, that controls the mutable data, and they can update that data at any time they want. And so this means that if you have an icon on your token, you can, and you want to rebrand and change that token icon, you can do that very easily. And you do that in a very secure way. You don't have to worry about some random people changing your token. Only the owner of the private key can change the token, and they can change it anytime or the icon, and they can change it anytime they want.
That's awesome. I'm very excited about this, and I will be making a video on this probably with my buddy out in Denver, because we're going to be trudging through different NFT and token protocols on different chains, and I've been excited about this for a while. So this is, for the 3D stuff, it means that I can put up a 3D object and then make the UV file mutable, so you could change the colors of 3D stuff for people, and that could be cool.
Yeah, and this is I'm glad you brought that up, because this is a very flexible, really the only thing that's like defined right now is the token icon, but the mutable data is really just a JSON document, so it can have any kind of data, structured data in there that you could possibly want. So if you had like a 2D screenshot of your 3D object, that could be a nice token icon, but then any additional data about that can be in that mutable data, and it can change.
Yeah, I think
I have a question. How much this will increase the number of requests to the REST API? Like if you have a wallet in fullstack.cash, there is some limitations. How much, for example, if you have 10 tokens with mutable data, how much more requests it will be from now?
Yeah, that's really good. It's significant. Yeah, it's a good question. And right now, at this moment in time, it's a significant amount, because we haven't taken any effort to try and like optimize it in any way. So it's pretty dumb and pretty brute force the way that it like if the token doesn't have any, it's just like a normal token, it doesn't have any data, it comes back pretty fast, because it just gets a couple error messages and figures out pretty fast that there's no mutable data there. And then if there is mutable data there, it's probably like 3 API requests to sort of follow the breadcrumb trail and get the data. And so particularly with wallet.fullstack.cash, this is a really good time for me to reiterate the disclaimer that the wallet does not work very well with lots of different types of tokens. I recommend that people use our paper wallet to store tokens on paper wallets for like long-term storage, and only keep the tokens that they like use on a regular basis in their wallet, because that will slow down performance with the number of tokens in your wallet. So right now it is rough, and so we need to next steps is to optimize that back and forth exchange to make that a little more efficient. And then second of all, I'll get to this, but the emphasis is really moving away from the REST API and moving towards the IPFS based infrastructure for like the free and hobbyist type stuff. We'll be able to scale much better with that technology. But if you have money and you can pay, like, because REST APIs, they require cloud infrastructure that requires money. So for businesses who want to use this in a business setting, there's still the REST API, and that can be optimized and it can be done. But we're going to see a dichotomy between the people who are paying for use and people who are not paying for use. We're going to have very different infrastructures for those two types of use cases.
Speaking of token wallets, I mean, do you know if the Electron Cash SLP wallet is still out there? Because I downloaded that a long time ago. Still works, but is that another option for people if they want to have a lot of tokens?
Yes and no. I mean, it still exists, still works. Some of the tokens give it trouble, like for instance FlexUSD with all their airdrop UTXOs. That really, Electronic Cash SLP has a hard time with that. The web wallet every wallet has a hard time with that. So there's some tokens out there that'll pretty much screw up every wallet, the FlexUSD being the biggest culprit there. But yeah, it still exists, it still works. So this library, this SLP mutable data library, we're putting it out there to encourage wallet developers to incorporate it and use it to follow this new standard for token icons. So it's not in Electron Cash wallet yet, but I'm one of my next steps is to start a dialogue with the devs over there and see if I can get them interested in incorporating the protocol, even if they choose not to use the JavaScript library, because Electron Cash is written in Python.
Right.
There was some clone of Electron Cash Acture something, which they fixed a little. I mean, the Electronic Cash wallet, it have problems with validating the tokens. It's a lot of requests to these GS Plus servers to validate the tokens. And I think somebody make a clone which are not doing this. So it's not validating them on the server side, or I don't know what, but it's faster and it can work with this problematic tokens.
Yeah, you're referring to Actorforth and Benjamin
Yes.
Sherry over there. They forked SLPDB and they got it to work with a SQL library. I think I'm right about that. A SQL library rather than MongoDB, and then they forked Electron Cash SLP, and it uses their forked version of SLPDB. So
Okay.
it is faster. There's also a lot more dependence on Actorforth. So if that makes your life better, go for it. And it has helped a lot of people. So anyways, yeah, big. Oh, go ahead.
No, I mean, we need to find some link for Aaron. I will maybe.
Oh yeah, I know they have a Gitter, which is like this web chat room
It's
for
like new
GitHub
Twitter
projects. Yeah, gitter.im, and that's where
I thought you were
Actorforth
talking
has
about the new Gitter that Joe Rogan got on.
Oh no, this one's been around for a while. It's like a preferred chat room. They have a really tight integration with GitHub. And anyways, Actorforth has a Gitter channel there if you want to use their stuff and need support. As long as you don't use a token like FlexUSD that has these just ridiculous DAGs, the original version of Electron Cash SLP will run fine. It'll figure it out. It's just it's these corner cases, these specific tokens like FlexUSD that are problematic that it has trouble with.
Those guys, jeez. We got some activity in the chat about this. Let me go ahead and pull that up. We got Aaron Sunman says, very excited about the SLP mutable data bit. Also very excited about the Bitcoin payment module. So glad you guys joined this group. Aaron, I think he's talking to the other Aaron in the chat that's there. So what's up, Aarons? A lot of good Aarons in the chat today.
Nice. Well, yeah, so I'll wrap up this section just by saying shortly we will have a single page web app out where you can, like a diagnostic tool, you can give it a token ID and it will, if it has an icon, it'll display the icon, and then it'll have two text boxes where it'll display the immutable data, if it exists, which you can attach to the document URL, and the mutable data, if it exists, which is attached to the document hash field of the token. And so it'll be kind of a diagnostic tool. So I'll talk about that more once that's available.
Awesome.
Okay, moving on to the Minimal SLP wallet. This is the sort of wallet engine in the web wallet. It's also used in the PSF BCH wallet, the command line wallet. So this is essentially like our wallet engine. Anytime you create a wallet or send money or send a token, it's going to invoke this library. So this is like a critical piece of our core infrastructure. And the default behavior of it when you instantiate it, when you bring it into existence, is that it uses the fullstack.cash infrastructure. So when you go to wallet.fullstack.cash, it's going to call this library, and this library is going to reach out to the fullstack.cash infrastructure. And if you're not on a fullstack.cash domain name, it's going to, only give you so many rate limits and then throw errors, and you can fix that with a jot token and all that good stuff. So all that behavior is going to continue to exist, but there's now a new functionality, experimental functionality that we're trying out, where you can instantiate it and have it call the IPFS based API at freebch.fullstack.cash. And so you do that switch. I have a link here to the code that shows you how to, when you instantiate it, how to pass in this consumer API string to tell it to do that. So this essentially unlocks free infrastructure, unlocks a free backend that will be maintaining at freebch.fullstack.cash. And that's leveraging our IPFS based infrastructure. So just to peek under the hood a little bit, what this is doing is it's running this IPFS BCH wallet consumer app, which is then over IPFS finding and selecting the most appropriate backend that it can talk to. And so this is going to allow us to offer, free infrastructure supported by the community as a whole. So on the one hand, there won't be some one person to blame if you're having bad connectivity issues, in which case, you should go to fullstack.cash and pay for something, because if you're not the product, then you are the product. But if you are running a hobby grade type system or just building a prototype real quick and you don't want to pay for professional service, this is a great way to get free access to the backend infrastructure.
Very cool. So people can use this to really mess around and get used to all the different protocols that you're developing.
Yeah, it's a great way to dip your toe into the water of this new IPFS-based paradigm, because the next step after this, if someone gets comfortable with this, the next step is to actually just run this IPFS BCH wallet consumer on your own computer, which will then allow you to have full control, and instead of relying on free bch.fullstack.cash to determine which backend it wants you to talk to. You have full control over which backend on the IPFS network you want your app to talk to. And so there will definitely be situations in the future where free bch.fullstack.cash is down. But if you're running this software yourself on your own computer, it'll never be down, because you can just essentially scan all the nodes on the IPFS network and find one that is working, and then use that one. So it gives you, I'm trying to give stair steps for developers to level themselves up as they go down this path. So there will be videos and stuff, but this is this is the beginning steps down that road.
Great.
And I just want to give some serious props to Daniel, because he is, I mean, I architected this, but he's the one that's been implementing all this stuff in the last few weeks. So big kudos to Daniel. He's a hard worker, even a brilliant developer.
Chris, which repository to see for the example of the usage of this minimal SLP wallet, like how to instantiate it and stuff like this?
Yeah, where this link that says consumer API, let me open that up. So when you
okay.
Yeah, so when you instantiate it, you're going to pass in a config object, and if that config object has a interface property with a value of consumer API, then it'll switch to the consumer API. Otherwise, it'll use the fullstack.cash REST API by default. So that's that. I mean, it's not much of an example. It's just a link to the actual code.
I was thinking, if you remember our previous talk about the React hooks, using this in the simple component example will be great. So you just put in your code use wallet and some parameters, and you have working wallet.
Yeah, exactly.
It will be like great, I think, for starting.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to achieve, is to be able to build single page apps that you can upload on like Filecoin or the SIA what's that home screen? Skynet. And have these apps that are just sort of anonymous and do not need an account and can tap into our IPFS infrastructure in order to talk to the backend infrastructure that it needs to do whatever it's doing.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, so moving on to the JSON RPC over IPFS and pay to write database stuff. Boy, I don't even know where to start with this. There's been essentially massive changes this last week. Basically everything's changed. So Sam Rock, who's like the one guy who's actually trying to use this code, I apologize for turning your life upside down. But things are running much better after a lot of these changes. So basically, the last 2 weeks, I've been doing a deep dive onto all this stuff. And in our last meeting, we talked about Ceramic. And I've been really excited about this Twitter clone called Orbis that runs on Ceramic. And what they're doing is very, very similar to what we're doing, but it's not the same. We're using all the same tech. They're using IPFS, we're using IPFS. They're using the Ethereum blockchain, we're using the Bitcoin Cash blockchain, really not that big of a difference from a technical level. And so it was really informative for me to dive in. Where we differ is on the emphasis of the technology. They're focused more on mutable content, like the kind of content you'd use in social media like Twitter. Whereas we're more focused on communication. So basically building a replacement for a REST API that maybe not as performant, but is more censorship resistant and can go over the IPFS network. Other than those like minor emphases, our tech stacks are pretty much identical. And so they've been struggling with all the same issues that we've been struggling with when it comes to IPFS. And so one of the big changes that they just recently implemented, I just watched they have community meetings just like this. And I went and watched their last one. And they are switching from the embedded JavaScript implementation of IPFS over to the Go IPFS implementation. And the reason for this is just because the JavaScript version is essentially treated like a redheaded stepchild. It's just that's like the official stance of Protocol Labs, is that they've chosen to make Go IPFS the primary reference implementation. It gets all the new updates. It's the cutting edge, and then they update the JavaScript stuff like when they have time, as it's convenient, and they have manpower. So there's always this big lag. So that's one good reason to use Go IPFS. But there's also like a bunch of bugs in JS IPFS. Like there's this memory leak that I'm aware of, they're aware of, and there's ways to manage that. But there's also just these other like random issues. Like I just discovered this major issue with PubSub. And so anyways, I've got them listed here, but so that's the biggest change is rather than embedding JavaScript IPFS into the application, which is what I would prefer to do, the actual results when you're using the software is much better when you run IPFS as a separate thing using their Go implementation. And then you just talk to it using the what is it? The IPFS-HTTP-client JavaScript library. So you're using a JavaScript library to control an external node rather than embedding the node in your app. There was also, like I mentioned, there was this big PubSub bug that would only let your node subscribe to 6 PubSub channels. And then any new channel you subscribe to would like knock an old one out. And this was not documented anywhere. I just happened to discover this because I noticed it and then came across some GitHub issues. And so it seems like there's only a handful of people that are even aware that this is an issue. But I found, so that basically right there limited the ability of all of our nodes to talk to one another. And so that was a big problem that's been going on for a while that I wasn't even aware of. So that's fixed now. So all the nodes are like way like communicating way better now. And what was this final one? Oh yeah, so we moved to a private network, and this is a little controversial. I didn't want to move to a private network, but there are dragons, even in the Go IPFS implementation. There are some serious bugs. I got to a point where I was able to rule out that the source of these bugs is our code. It's definitely something deep into the IPFS implementation where the node will like try to connect to like 700 or 1,000 nodes at one time. And so what you'll see is like the CPU spikes and the bandwidth spikes and like your computer will freeze. And I noticed this in the JavaScript implementation, but it's also exists in the Go implementation. It seems to happen randomly. Sometimes it fixes itself and sometimes it does not fix itself. And at other times, like one node will infect another node. This is what caused me to start really doing all this refactoring is that I was just seeing like our entire network was just going down for no apparent reason. And it was just, and so whatever, I still don't no one knows exactly what the root cause of this is, but by moving ourselves to a private network, we get to sidestep all those issues. We don't like, they just go away because it has something to do with our nodes trying to interact with the wider IPFS network. So by simply isolating our network, that issue goes away. And so it's still IPFS, it still uses all the same tech. It's just that our nodes can't talk to other IPFS nodes. And we can still get content through gateways. We can still share content across our network. And just for we'll probably eventually move away from this private network model as we can and as it does not cause issues, but that'll be down the road. So anyways, I've got instructions here. It's just like a little key, a little piece of code that you drop into your directory and then your node's on our private network. And so I've got instructions there for anybody who wants to spin up a node on how to do that.
I have a question here, just a brief one. Just to clarify if I understand correctly, until now, this IPFS node, the GS one, it was working inside your browser, right? And from now, you will need to start the Go node. It's compiled one, but a separate node on your computer. Put there this sworn key. And from the browser, it's using just HTTP library to make requests to your own node.
Yeah. Right? So I'm glad you asked this, Stoyan, because what this is mostly going to affect, if this thing comes up, I'll show it. But in that blog post that I talked about last week, I described this new Ecash deck where there's a local backend and a global backend. So this mostly affects these local and global backends. On the front end, there's this Gatsby, like I want the web wallet to be totally like living inside of IPFS. That one we can't move away from the embedded JavaScript. Like that has to basically be embedded into the web app. And so we're still going to do it that way. But so this change mostly affects the local and global backend. So if you're building a regular web app, you're still going to call some backend, like whether that's your local backend running IPFS service consumer, or you're calling like free bch.fullstack.cash. So that won't really change. So from a front end perspective, nothing's going to change. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, because that is an important thing. So if you're a front end developer, this won't really affect you. Okay. But essentially, from the front end perspective, I just don't know. Like right now, our emphasis is on these back end. Like we've got to get these back ends running properly before we can even worry about the front end stuff. And so I think if the bulk, especially if our backend infrastructure, if it doesn't have these problems and everything's running good, that's good. And then we just have to see if these are significant enough issues for the front end apps. They may be. I don't really know yet. And then we'll have to figure out our own solutions to that. Okay, so that's that. So I'll just leave this section off by saying that if anybody is really interested in IPFS and wants to understand this stuff at a deeper level, please ask questions on the PSF channel or the BCHJS Telegram channel for our technical stuff. Yeah, just ask questions. We still have open bounties for spinning up some of this backend infrastructure. So what I need to do from here is create more videos and more documentation on how to create circuit relays and how to create Bitcoin Cash infrastructure using these new methods and using this new code. There are already bounties and videos, and for the most part, they still apply. But basically, if anybody has questions, please reach out to me.
Sounds good.
Oh, yeah, thanks, bud. So moving on, PSF BCH Wallet, which is our command line wallet, it now has this new message send command, and I just want to demo this real quick. This is going to allow us to send end-to-end encrypted messages. So I'm checking so this is using free bch.fullstack.cash. It uses it by default. So if anybody wants to get started, that's a nice thing. This command line wallet, you don't have to pay to use it. It's using the free BCH infrastructure. So it's also a great way to get example code if you want to see how we did it here in your own app. So I've got this wallet. It's got a little bit of Bitcoin Cash. It's got a little bit less than 1 PSF token. And so anybody who's used message.fullstack.cash, this is the same thing. The difference is that whereas that app used a custom IPFS node, this is now using the pay to write database. So what's happening here is this is the address for my own wallet, and I'm sending a message with the subject test and the message, this is a test. The app went and looked up the public key for this address on the blockchain, and so it got the public key. It encrypted this message with that public key, which is this string of hex here, and then it burned 1/10 of a PSF token in order to write to the pay to write database, and then it uploaded that encrypted message to the pay to write database. Here's the hash, or basically the receipt, and then it sent a transaction to this address with a dust to signal that, hey, you have a message, and the opportune has I think this hash in it. And so if I pull up the pay to write database explorer, we can actually see that. Right here, PSF BCH wallet. This is the latest entry. And so this is what this is the data that was actually entered into the pay to write database. Here's our encrypted message that can only be decrypted by the person who has the private key for that address. So it's end-to-end encrypted. So even though this data is public, it's encrypted, so it's okay. And basically this is how it's working. So Daniel did this implementation, and he is currently working on a message check and a message read commands, which will finish this off. So you'll be able to check for new messages and then decrypt and read any messages that anybody sends you. I'm really excited to have this functionality in the command line wallet so that we can have end-to-end communication within the wallet, and then eventually that'll get pushed up to the web wallet. And again, like this is the same functionality that was in message.fullstack.cash that we've had. It's just that we're moving away from that custom IPFS server that I don't want to maintain, and instead we're using the pay to write database for the actual like medium for exchange, for holding the data in between the two parties, between one person sending it and one person reading it. So pretty happy with that. I mean, I'm just like, having end-to-end encrypted messaging is so important in today's day and age. Like, this is such a big milestone, because what I want us is to be able to securely and privately transmit money, securely and privately communicate, and then those two ingredients can lead to like more expressive ways of trading, whether it's icons or censorship resistant Craigslist, or whatever you want. But these are like the basic foundations of trade.
No, this sort of thing is awesome. This, just to be able to do this, I totally agree with you. This is how you move into the future, and I think there are people that don't understand it's not just about censorship from the state or government, but like competitors is another form of where you can experience censorship. People can reroute your messages or reroute your payments and really mess with you. And this happens all the time in the regular business world. I know my buddy works in the mining industry, and they have stuff all over the world, and they literally had a bank transfer rejected, so they weren't able to operate in that area. And I was talking to him saying, you should be looking into crypto, because this would be a way that you wouldn't have to worry about that sort of thing. But people don't understand if they're not in business. This happens all the time, where you could be doing a business in a country, and that country's like, nope, we're not going to allow you to take your money out. And now it's just set you behind.
Yeah. It's what's funny is I'm hearing the story over and over and over, where somebody knows somebody who basically, like, the bank told them, no, you can't use your money. And like, you roll the clock back 5 years, and that wouldn't have even been something that was worth talking about. Like, that would have just been part of business. But it's only because things have gotten so good with crypto that everybody in the crypto space is so used to, like, it just works. And how could anybody stop me from using my own money? Like, that's absurd. And yeah. And so now that we have this new frame of reference, now every time it happens to somebody, it's worth mentioning. And it happens a lot. It happened a lot before, but now it's actually worth mentioning. And so I just love it.
Yeah, it really is. And it is funny that you talk about the new framework. It is a new framework. And yeah, it's one of those things where you're just like, this was acceptable. I accepted that a wire transfer is going to take X amount of time. And now I'm like, why? Why does it need to take 5 days to transfer my money? This is putting
we've shifted the Overton window, and like that, I love it.
Chris, have a question for this. Now this code is part of the PSF BCH wallet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where we'll move after this? Will it move to the API, BCH API, or to the Minimal Slp Wallet? Because we want to use this in the web wallet everywhere, right?
Right.
So where will this code be?
Yeah, so the mental framework that I'm working off of is we want to get these features into PSF BCH wallet, our CLI wallet, and then we want to move those features into wallet.fullstack.cash. So that's like the next step for these features is.
But wallet.fullstack.cash is under water using the Minimal Slp wallet, right? So if you fix the Minimal Wallet, it will work also with the client wallet, SLP client wallet, also with wallet.fullstack.cash, also with Gatsby, everywhere, right?
Yeah, sort of. So SLP CLI wallet uses BCH.js directly. It does not use Minimal SLP wallet. But PSF BCH wallet, that CLI wallet, and wallet.fullstack.cash, they both use Minimal SLP wallet.
Yes, and Gatsby starter also, right? The
right,
Gatsby template.
Yeah.
So it will be good if it's part of somehow from the core stuff. I don't know if can it be done like in the BCH API? Is it
well, I mean, yeah, it could. Everything could be done directly with BCH.js. I mean, it is under the hood through Minimal SLP wallet. The main change here, the only thing that's like new that's happening here is the use of the pay to write database, which is using that P2WDB NPM library, which is actually what I was going to talk about next. That's really the only, like fundamentally, that's the only thing that's changed from message.fullstack.cache or the functionality that exists now. I might not be understanding your question, and does it feel like I am or not?
I mean, my point was, is it is it better to be this code to be included like separately in every of the different wallets, or it can be something like, I don't know, library, some common component that can be used in any of these, so there will be no several copies on the code or stuff like this one?
Yeah. So there's a list of software here. There's Minimal SLP wallet, which is our wallet engine. There's P2WDB, which allows you to interact with the pay to write database. Those are both NPM libraries. There's also the BCH message lib, which is an NPM library, which does the actual messaging protocol in terms of like signaling to someone they have a message and writing those transactions. And those follow another specification. And then there's the BCH encrypt lib, which is another NPM library that does the end-to-end encryption. And so all four of those libraries are used in the PSF BCH wallet, CLI wallet, in the web wallet. So that's the idea, is to like take these and break them down into like, very focused libraries so that they have just a very high level interface, and then you orchestrate those. So that's really what's happening. So that's the template that I'm hoping other people will follow.
Okay, if it's if it's already made on components, I mean, we need to think about reducing the duplication of the code. Why to make it one time in this wallet and again in other wallet? But if it's like just including 4 or 5 libraries, yeah, it makes sense. It will be
So that's the idea. I agree. I don't want to duplicate a bunch of code. I want to make it as abstract and easy to copy and paste, like 3 or 4 lines, as possible. So yeah, and I mean it's a journey. So I'm pretty happy with where we're at right now. And then this whole trajectory of going from the command line wallet to the web wallet. And because that's a big shift. There's a lot of things that break just from going from Node.js to browser JavaScript. There's a lot of things that can break. So yeah, those libraries I mentioned, the encrypt library and the message library and Minimal SLP wallet, these are all compiled with Browserify to make sure that they run in a browser environment. And so that's essentially what we're trying to do, is like, reduce the bespoke code by breaking everything into these mission focused NPM libraries, and then compiling those libraries, making sure they work on browser and Node.js. And so anyways, that's the trajectory that we're trying to follow. Okay, so yeah, the last item here in this section is Gary has updated the P2WDB NPM library for interacting with the pay to write database. It had the pay to write database, like the public one, hard coded in there, and he just added it as a configuration variable. When you instantiate the library, you can set the URL you want to use. So Where this is really useful is if you're running your own local copy of the pay to write database and you want to use this library to interact with it, which is what he's doing right now as he builds out the decks. And so that's a nice little, should have been done that way to begin with, but yeah, he caught it and fixed it. So that's now in place, which is a good segue to the decks. So in the swap protocol at a high level, there's 3 phases to do a trade. There's offer making, offer taking, and acceptance. And so an offer can be a buy or a sell offer, but someone makes the offer, someone browses those, and they take one of the offers, and then that original party who made the offer reviews it and accepts it, and then that completes a trade. And so we have that first part, that offer making, we have that working now on Avalanche. We had it working on Bitcoin Cash. It's now working on Avalanche. So that whole workflow for the first part of actually creating an offer and getting out there is done. So that's a big progress. The next step is creating a list API call so that you can browse all the open offers. And then we can work on the second phase, which is offer taking. And so it's good progress. It's really good progress. Does that make sense to you guys? Sort of where we're at?
Yes.
Yeah.
How or what will I remember when I was reading this protocol, it was using like BitDB or something for to query what are the open offers.
Yeah,
this one will query the P2 write database, right? For the
right. Yeah. So
entries.
it was, so Vin Armani's original implementation used the Bitcoin file protocol created by James Cramer, BFP. And so that stores this data on the blockchain directly, which makes sense from an app developer standpoint. That's probably the easier thing to do, because rather than trying to deal with 2 networks, you only have to deal with 1 network. But the pay to write database is just much more convenient to use. So like I said, like on a surface, that makes sense on a surface level, but this whole process, that whole Bitcoin files protocol, that was never fully baked. James abandoned it early on. And it's actually much more complex and bug prone than you'd think, just giving it a cursory look. So the pay to write database, we've already gotten that to a point where the workflow's much smoother. And it can hold more data. You don't have to do this like silly chunking thing that they try to do to get all that data to fit onto the blockchain. So that's the main difference between what Vin built and what we're building. And so it uses the pay to write database for this.
So the queries will be to the pay to write database, not to some BitDB or something for the to get this open.
Right. Yeah, that's the fundamental problem. Like this whole collaborative transaction thing, like it's been around for a long time. Vin definitely refined it, and I learned about it from him, and he did a lot of the initial code that led us, like in JavaScript, that let us like really run with this idea. But at the heart of it, we need a censorship resistant database. We need a rendezvous point for the 2 people in the trade to meet up. And so that could be the blockchain. And if it's not the previously there just really was no other option other than like there just aren't very many censorship resistant databases out there. I mean, there are today. Now there's Filecoin, and essentially that's what the pay to write database is it's a censorship resistant database. And so it's a natural fit for this use case. So that it's starting to become clear, like why I spent so much time building the pay to write database, and then like why I went after these Decks projects so hard, because it's a really good fit.
Awesome.
Okay, well, I will move on to and just real quick. So it's after January, so we're now officially starting work on the Ecash Decks. And so the next step there is we're going to be able to leverage all this work that we're doing in the Avalanche chain. And to really kick off the Ecash specific stuff, I'm going to submit some pull requests to BCH API and BCH JS to just improve the support for the Ecash blockchain in there and make it more dealing with addresses and denominations a little better. And then we'll be able to port all this code that we're building on the Avalanche chain over to the Ecash chain. And because we already have it working in Bitcoin Cash, we know that it's, once we solve the denomination and address issues with Ecash, it'll just work.
I saw you already refactored also the BCH GS example directory. There is already like BSH directory and Ecash directory there. Will be there also AVAX added there, or it will be separate examples?
Yeah, we're not. Ava Labs is already doing a lot of that work. Like they already have their Avalanche JS library, and they already have like examples and stuff. Gabriel's doing a great job with that over there. So I don't want to recreate their work. I created that separate directory in the BCH.js examples repo because someone had submitted some Ecash specific code and it was kind of stepping on the BCH stuff, and a lot of people use those examples and they don't care about Ecash. They just want to focus on BCH. So that's why I just basically moved some of those files to a separate directory. And I do plan to flesh that out as we go. Because, yeah, just so that we can give equal support to both BCH and Ecash. Good question. But yeah, in terms of AVAX, we have our PSF AVAX wallet, which is a command line wallet. It's essentially a copy of the PSF BCH wallet, but running on AVAX. So we're using that same model where like that command line wallet's going to be essentially our reference implementation. And then from there, we'll take those features and we'll move them out to the web wallet. But we're essentially stopping there. We're not worried about the backend infrastructure for that like we are with BCH, because Ava Labs is very well funded and they have public Avalanche nodes that we can use. And so it's just like, that's just stuff that we don't need to deal with. So we're just leveraging that. And we'll see if that's a good decision. But I mean, essentially, it's just a matter of trying to focus our attention on the things that, you know, is going to BCH is basically the reference blockchain for me, because I know it the best, and I just don't want to spend time recreating unnecessarily back-end infrastructure that we don't need. Okay, so the indexer. Probably actually the first thing I should jump down to frame all this is the very last item. On January 1st, there was I know exactly what happened. Is someone was consolidating all their Flex USD coins, and so there were these transactions that had like hundreds of inputs of little Flex USD UTXOs and consolidating them. And this is what happens. This is why Flex USD is like a problematic coin. And it basically knocked all the SLPDBs off the network. I run like 5 of them and all 5 went down. It was just simply that there's too much memory usage and the MongoDB couldn't deal with it, even though it had 32 gigabytes of RAM. And so we are, and I found the root cause. Basically, the MongoDB needed to, I needed to increase the timeout. Like MongoDB just needed more time to process these things before the REST API that was talking to it gave up. And that was a root cause. So I increased the timeout from like 30 seconds to 120 seconds. And that at least is now allowing SLPDB to struggle forward. But SLPDB is like very clearly in its death throes right now. If I had a system with 64 gigabytes of RAM, it might be a little better, but most VPSs don't offer that service. It's really hard to buy a desktop with that much RAM. 32 is kind of where everything's at right now. So if you set that as your reference implementation of 32 gigabytes of memory, SLPDB is like clearly in its death throes. And it's just struggling very hard to maintain a sync to the tip of the blockchain. Which we knew this day. I knew this day was coming. I've been waiting for it. That's why we started work on this new SLP indexer. So timing is actually pretty good. I've been running the indexer and then comparing the results against SLPDB, and in most cases everything's exactly the same. There's a few tokens with really weird DAGs and people doing really weird things where it's a little different. So maybe not counting all the burns. Definitely all corner cases. I'll need to continue to look into that, but for the most part, the accuracy is looking pretty good. I've built a REST API that lets you look up the balance of an address, validate that a transaction is a valid SLP transaction, and get sort of hydrated transaction information, like how many tokens were in the input, how many tokens were on the output, that sort of thing. And token statistics, so like looking up the total burned tokens and the total tokens in circulation for a token. So those APIs have been built, they exist. This morning I added the status REST API endpoint that lets you sort of just query an API endpoint to check on the status of the indexer, like what's the block height of the chain, what's the sync status, like how synced is the indexer, those sort of things. And so my focus this next week is going to be on really just packaging that into a Docker container. The latest iteration of this code is at block 704,000, and the tip of the chain right now is like 722,000. So it's like I got like 20,000 blocks to go. But it's only doing, as what I've noticed is these indexers, they start off really fast, but then as the database gets bigger, it gets slower. And so now it's only indexing like 1,000 to 2,000 blocks a day, which is fine because there's only 144 new blocks in a day. So I'm basically indexing a week for every day of processing time as it gets closer to the tip of the chain. It's pretty slow. But anyway, so we'll get there, but it's this last 20,000 blocks is probably going to take a few days to get there. So I'm trying to package everything up in a Docker container, get a public instance out there so that people can start kicking the tires and interacting with the REST API. And then, at some point in the next 10 to 20 days, it'll sync to the tip of the chain and we can actually use it. And then from there, I can actually just take snapshots of the database and distribute it over the cache strap, same way we do the cache strap infrastructure. So people don't actually need to index from Genesis. Only one person needs to do this. Anybody's free to do it, of course, but if your objective is just to get something up and working, you'll be able to download our database snapshots, which will be about 8 gigabytes, and then get set up and running in about an hour.
So if once this launches, if people say a business wants to use SLP for rewards points or something like that, they could just take a snapshot from a certain point and then run. Would they need to run that on location, or could this be a business that somebody could start up where it says, hey, I'll run it and you can run your rewards points through me?
Yeah, all of the above. So I'm trying to get this to a point where, like the other Bitcoin Cash infrastructure, you don't have to rely on anybody. If you have the technical prowess, you can run your own infrastructure and you don't have to be dependent on anyone. So that's the thing I'm trying to get to. But we will offer this as a service through fullstack.cash for businesses that just want to pay a monthly fee and get access to a professional version of this and not have to run all that stuff in-house. And then also we're going to incorporate this into the cash stack and our IPFS infrastructure, so people will be able to access it through. This isn't going to be a drop-in replacement for SLPDB, but from an API standpoint, it can be. It will be. Like my goal is to get this set up and then add endpoints to BCH API that are identical or very, very similar to the existing endpoints for SLPDB, so that you can get all the same information that you're used to getting. So anyways, that's the plan for moving forward with that. So offering different tiers of availability based on money and technical prowess, and but ultimately making it so that people aren't required to depend on anybody else for this information.
Yeah, that's one of the things that excites me about the SLP protocol over some of the other token protocols I see out there, is just the cheapness and the ease of use. And so it helps, like right now, especially I've been diving into the Ethereum world, because everything is so expensive, you have this incentive to make these big tokens or big NFTs, you know. It's got to be this big campaign. It's got to be, we have to develop a community, which isn't bad. Those are all good things. But it's not something where, say, I run a food co-op. There's lots of those, and people usually pay a membership to be a part of it. And maybe they pay that membership, and I use an SLP token to distribute to them for claims on the food. And now maybe I'm also running a farmer's market, and you can also come and use that SLP token at the farmer's market. It doesn't make sense to do this on Ethereum because it's so costly to do tokens that way. I mean, it would cost you more to run the tokens on Ethereum, whereas SLP makes a lot more sense, and you could be essentially running something locally, databasing these SLP transactions.
Yeah. And once I'm going to stop sharing here because that's pretty much the agenda. Once the indexer is synced, it only consumes about 4 gigabytes of memory, and it has no problem staying synced once it's synced. That's the problem that SLPDB is having right now, is it consumes 32 gigabytes of memory, and it's having a really hard time just staying synced. So that's the main, pain point that this thing's going to solve. And like you said, like if we're going to see it used widely, like in farmers markets, it needs to be better than what SLPDB is right now. And so that's what we're trying to achieve. Go ahead.
I had a question. I just kind of lost. Maybe it'll come back to me. So is there a possibility of utilizing cell phones for the database? So, people could be, because they're talking about, Bluetooth LE. There's a guy that's big into security for cell phones and that's Internet of Things tech. I forget it. I think it's Brax or whatever on YouTube and Odyssey. And he's talking about how every Bluetooth device now communicates. That's a Bluetooth LE. It communicates with every other device within like a mile radius. And my thoughts are, why can't we utilize this in a way to essentially have a second internet that talks to the internet and can make transactions that way? So even when you're not connected, you're connected in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, in terms of the Bitcoin Cash infrastructure, and this also applies to Ecash, my goal is to be able to get an entire cache stack to run reliably on a desktop computer with 32 gigs of RAM, or to put it another way, 4 Raspberry Pis or three Raspberry Pis. So the full node consumes about 2 gigabytes of RAM, and it needs about so I'm just going to ignore hard drive space because it's cheap.
Yeah.
But none of these software require significant CPU resources once they're synced. When they're syncing, they require as much CPU power as you can give it. But once they're synced and they're just trying to maintain the tip of the chain, they don't require significant processing power. So really, it all comes down to memory. And so a full node uses about 2 gigabytes of memory. The Fulcrum indexer also uses about 2 gigabytes of memory. They both use like 2 to 4, but I think they can run on 2 if that's all you give them. And then this new indexer, the SLP indexer, it'll consume like 4 to 8. And and so even if they're all using as much memory as you can possibly get, you're like, what, 8 plus 8, so you're like 16 gigs of memory. And so everything should be able to very comfortably run on an old desktop. Or like I said, if you had one Raspberry Pi dedicated to the full node, one to the indexer and one to the SLP indexer, you could probably run the whole infrastructure on 3 Raspberry Pis. The point is to just try and get the computation requirements down to something like that. And then from there, you can just use APIs to move the data around as you need. And so that's what can run on the cell phone. And that's what can run over Bluetooth.
Yeah. Yeah.
It will be interesting to have something like soup indexer. Just give it just one coin and one token, and it will just keep the tip of this token, like PSF soup indexer.
Like a whitelist, yeah. So SLPDB has that feature, but it actually doesn't help very much in terms of the resource usage. That's definitely a feature I want to add to this SLP indexer, is a blacklist and a whitelist, where you can tell it to ignore problematic coins like FlexUSD or Honk, or just whitelist the ones that you're interested in. Like maybe you only want to pay attention to stable coins and like the PSF token. Like I've done that before. I've created installations for clients like that, where, it's like if you don't care, like if you like the PSF is a good example of that. Like if we just didn't care about any other coin, our SLP infrastructure could be, improved, like much more efficient if we just ignored all other coins. But it's much harder to build a general purpose indexer that tracks every coin in existence. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, so that completes the agenda. It's been about an hour. We can wrap it up, but I don't mind staying on for another 20 minutes or so if there's anything else that you guys want to discuss.
Stoyan, you got anything for us?
I have some gems. I have also a small, maybe very little steps in the multi-sig wallet.
Oh yeah, if you got any updates there, I'm keen, man.
I'm ready for you to screen share.
Not so exciting, but I was struggling with creating the signatures. This part of the code was not very clear, but I found some unit tests here. And reading this code, it seems so easy to create. Like this one will create this code will just encode all of the public keys in the redeem script. Like it's multi-sig output encode and pub key 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 something. And this transaction builder, you just put this in the redeem script, and it's some interesting like flag for the signatures. Usually you put here like sig hash all, but there's something like this one. And looking on this code, it must be everything needed for multi-sig transaction. So I'm now in the middle of trying this code to see if it will be, enough to have a multi-sig transaction.
That's awesome. This is all in BCH.js, huh?
Yeah. It's the unit code for because looking on this code, it's very different. For example, this line for some input with some index, the output for this input, but it's not existing for us. So it was very difficult. But looking on this stuff, maybe this mechanism is already existing inside the BCH library itself.
Yeah.
You just need to put there the right redeem script, and it will create the other parts.
Man, I'm so glad you found. Yeah, I'm glad you dug into this, because this gets back to the history of BCH.js. So it started as Bitbox, which was created by Gabriel, and he Gabriel Cardona, and he just grabbed a bunch of Bitcoin. Like he basically just went out and found like a bunch of different Bitcoin JavaScript libraries, adapted them for Bitcoin Cash, and then incorporated them into Bitbox. They were all MIT licensed. So Bitbox really just started out as a what do you call it? Like a collection of other projects. And so that transaction builder is one of those such projects. Like Gabriel didn't create that. It's its own separate JavaScript project, which may have been abandoned or may still be maintained. I don't know. And so, yeah, he must have built all this like just shortly prior to me joining the team, because I've never seen this before, but there's a lot of code in BCHJS like this.
Yeah.
I've never
so
seen.
I will continue to try this one. I hope it will produce the real multi-sig transaction.
Yeah.
So yeah, but this is
sweet.
Not so much still there.
Yeah, you might just have to dig into that transaction builder, and if you go through the package.json, you can sort of figure out where that code originally came from.
Yeah.
And all those different sig hash types, and all that information, you just kind of have to dig through. Yeah. I mean, so good job, Stoyan. Good job on digging into this and really dogging this thing.
Yeah. So just wait a little. I will have maybe more. So, and the other ones, just 10 minutes maybe. I maybe briefly talk about this site, buildspace.so. Maybe I mentioned it in the end of the previous meeting, but I encourage everybody to try this because it's awesome. It's hands-on tutorials to create different stuff. But first, the topics are great. See, you just built a DAO. So in the end of this, you have a working DAO. Or you can have like a NFT collection on Solana, stuff like this one. And the whole process is great. It's like a small, you start with some starter code. So it's already a small working application, but very generous one, like a small React application. And you have some copy-paste code that you add. And in the end of every lesson, you take usually like a screenshot of your current work. So finally, you have like your whole process documented, what you've done from the beginning to the end with the screenshots. And if you see on the these different topics, it's exactly what you want to do, even if you don't use their manual. So you create the membership NFT, governance tokens. You distribute this with some like airdrop. Also, you remove admin powers from the keys. All of these steps are like exactly what you need to do. It's like great, like a manual, even if you do this in some other language or framework or whatever.
Wow. So
this DAO stuff is so good. And the best part, all of this is without a single code of Solidity. It's everything JavaScript. Pure JavaScript. And I just, it's, leading to my second gem, which is...
Well, so question for you on these. Yeah. If you find something in here that you like, can you port it over to Avalanche, or how does the actual implementation work?
Yeah, it's pretty much a blockchain independent. Like I will mention this now, the other stuff.
Okay.
But because I implemented it one time on the Ethereum and one time on Polygon, it's working on both of them on the test nets. But it's can be done also on Avalanche C-chain without problems. Because why it can be done? Because of these guys. thirdweb.com. These guys are also like champions. What they have is I don't know how exactly to explain it, but it's like a factory of contracts. So you can create some contracts from here, but in the end, you own the contracts, not they. So you're using some like contracts factories to create your contracts.
Okay.
And is it make sense or?
Yeah. They're just basically it's parameterized, and they generate the contract for you,
Just
and then you deploy it.
Maybe to show some. So when you create some project, I'll just make random name. You can have different modules in this one. Okay, I will not lose time with this one. So you can have different modules, but as I mentioned, you just have to see fork or I don't know, create your contract from their contract, and they have also a JavaScript library, which is named like thirdweb.sdk.
Mhm.
And it's just how to see a wrapper on top of the ethers.
Oh, okay.
So like for this DAO project, my final code is this one. So this is bunch of JavaScript scripts.
Mhm.
Like for example, see, this is how I'm creating the governance token. It's just
Okay.
app deploy token module.
Wow.
And you just gave him name or something. So looking on this one, it does not have any blockchain dependencies here. So
Yeah.
you just configure in here, you just tell him which RPC you want to use, and you just start going through the code. So they
Wow.
have modules for everything, for NFTs, for governance token, for airdropping, for voting. It's creating, this one is creating like, just let me show the final product. It maybe will.
Show it to us.
Yeah. It's this code DAO, that DAO for coders. So when you connect your wallet, just maybe here. When you connect your wallet, you are receiving the membership NFT. And if you have this membership NFT, you can access the members page. So you can see which address have how much of this governance token, name code. And here you can have proposals which you can vote for. And they will automatically pay this kind of tokens to some address, or will mint some tokens, new mint tokens. And you can vote for this, for or against. So this was creating just in several hours without any solidity, just with pure JavaScript.
Right. Just so it looks like, so there's ethers, which is essentially like the Ethereum version of BCH.js.
Yeah.
And then there's this SDK that you just showed us. So that interfaces with ethers, and it's all JavaScript.
Yes.
I love I love this, the architecture. I love the idea.
So if you have time, just go through this build space project. It will introduce you all of these ready like libraries, this third web or something. It was also for the Solana was great. And your final, this is the interesting part. When you finish the product, you getting NFT for the completing some jobs, and they're awesome also. They're like animated.
Nice.
So very cool.
So see, this is for my DAO guy. Some cookies.
It says built on Solana. So do they give you Solana-based NFTs? Or
Yes. Okay. So the this project was on Solana. So I have some Solana NFTs inside my wallet. But the final product, this complete projects, they're all of the Polygon because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
So you can sell because they're on OpenSea. You can sell them if you want, but yeah.
Wow.
So this was great. This build space, I like it a lot. I spent like several days here building stuff. It was very educational, and I can still use it every day. I just look on this like journal, what I've done. So I can do this on other framework, Smart BCH or whatever, or I can do this without the third web because this just common like sense, like create all tokens, do this. Like great,
Wow.
great project.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, that is a gem.
That's great.
Yeah, yeah. If I can find the time, I really want to just play with that, just to assess like how much energy would it take to build a DAO, and then create a token, and then create like like, okay, let's do a vote and release some funds that in a treasury wallet using a vote, using the NFTs, and just like, yeah, it'd be good to assess just that basic DAO governance workflow.
In the chat.
Also,
Oh,
I here just if you have time, I put some what is the pronunciation? Gist?
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 Yeah.
Some gist. It's a list of all of the project that we talked the previous year.
Oh, if you're sharing your screen, we can't see it.
Okay. It's just a list. So, but
That's fine.
yeah.
I just thought I mentioned.
It's just a list of all of the project that we taught the previous year. This Unlock, Gnosis, all of them.
nice.
And I just tried to see which blockchain supporting most of them. So the golden guy was Polygon. All of them are working there. And until the week ago, it was my first choice. I was like, okay, next year I will develop on Polygon. But before a week, something happens with their blockchain. Some shitty game like Sunflowers Farmers or something. It's broke the whole network. Like their fees increased like 10 times or something. But
Yep.
so I'm now searching again for something. But Polygon was great. All of this, they have like Gnosis there, Gelato for this automation, all of them, all of things that I talk about. And Phantom is maybe next one. I'm not sure. Avalanche also, they have most of them.
Well, that's good. See, that's the thing is like, there's such a race to build business apps on some of these networks that, privacy and decentralization and like these considerations are being, just, they're not at the forefront. And so you get things like, oh, let's build everything on Polygon, and then it crashes. And it's like, well, why? I guess I've just gotten used to being like, I'm different and other people don't think about it. Don't place such a big emphasis on this, but like, I'm like done building business apps on a platform that I don't control, or that I have to rely on some third party in order to do that. But I'm also not building very fast.
Yeah, the problem is that I'm already sick of porting tools. I cannot start building applications because I don't have like this Alchemy API or Gelato or something. They're just missing. So most of my time is just porting some tools so I can start application, but they usually are difficult to port. So I know Polygon was the only one which all of the tools already existed there, so you just can start building apps.
Yeah.
There, as far as building as well, there's cryptozombies.io. I'll just share this real quick with people on the stream.
That's a great site.
My buddy out Rida, we're doing a podcast where we talk about NFTs and cryptos, and then we actually dive into code, so you can check that out. And this is one of the things we talked about, where you can go and make games on Solidity. And
Aaron, we can't see your screen if you're sharing. I don't know if you're sharing.
They can see it, but it doesn't work because I'm running OBS. It doesn't work for that. And then another thing is the Helium Ecosystem. Crazy Money was saying that they are already using what we just talked about, Bluetooth, to build a networking. And looks like they're mining and doing crypto using Bluetooth and IoT devices. So I will transition back over here. But that was in the chat there. And let's see who else. And then, yeah, Crazy Money was talking about that. And then Bitcoin payment module says, meeting isn't complete without gems. So And
Yeah,
I
thank you,
place
Stoyan, for those gems.
I place all those links from Stoyan in the Telegram, so you guys
You
can
have some mistake,
reference
so
them.
I'll correct them. The build space is not IO, it's SO. Just,
Oh, okay. I'll
okay,
go check it,
put
correct it.
here. It's this one. Third trap is right.
Yeah, so there we go.
Yes. So the other one, yeah. Yes. So again, the close-up of my stomach. See how it's growing.
We love it. We love it.
Yeah. It's Christmas time, so
Oh yeah, I hear ya. Well, that's awesome. All this stuff is really really cool. And Stoyan, you gave me subjects for the next few podcasts because we like to actually dive into that stuff.
if you can do manual, you can talk with them about the creating the BCH manual. I think they will be interested.
Yeah.
Like if you can put some of our stuff inside their build space framework so people can try building, it will be great. Like creating SOP token on BCH or some kind of.
Yeah.
I like their how they going like a small journal of what you're doing. You getting in the end NFT to be happy with the some
Yeah, it really
moving
gamifies
NFT.
it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so it can be any manual. It can be some of our stuff. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
would
That-
be very
that'd be
nice
great.
publicity for our stuff.
Yeah,
Very cool.
we'll be working that out. We'll do some sessions on that. Go through that sort of thing.
All right, well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. It's been an hour and a half, and man, we've covered a lot of ground.
All right.
Does anybody have any closing thoughts?
Just I wanted to comment again on how overwhelming the whole space is, and finding your niche is I think one of the bigger challenges that's going on right now for people. There's so many opportunities and so many different places you can go.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, exactly, and that's I don't know what advice to give to people, because it's like, well, do you want to build fast but you don't really care about security or independence? Well, there's lots of options for you.
Yeah. It's tough to keep up with everything. It really is tough to keep up. We have one more thing in the chat here, Bitcoin payment module. I like that philosophy about not relying on third parties. I can't remember the phrase you used, Chris. Either self-reliance, self-dependence, or self-leadership. All good themes.
Yeah,
So,
self-sufficiency.
Self-sufficiency. So thank you for everybody that participated in the chat today. We love to see that sort of thing, and we will always read your chats on air. So, all right.